Well, thank you everybody for joining us for today's special BU Alumni Weekend 2018 webinar, Unleash the Power of Your BU Alumni Network. My name is Jeff Murphy and I'm happy to be one of your hosts today.
And I'm Dan Gardiner. Together with Jeff, we make up the Career Programs team here in Alumni Relations, and I'm also glad to be co-presenting today's webinar.
Today's webinar is offered to our 326,000 alumni around the globe. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals. We aim to do this by providing alumni with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. I know that we have alumni joining us today from some very far away places, 14 different countries to be exact. We've got alumni logging in from Venezuela, Brazil, China, France, Indonesia, Korea, Morocco, New Zealand, in the U.S., places like Alameda, California, Woodland, Colorado, Winter Park, Florida, Wildwood, Missouri, Cary, North Carolina, Buckhannon, West Virginia, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Randolph, Brockton, Westwood, Roxbury, Sharon, Norwell, Littleton, and more. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really value your opinion on this and every program that we offer.
And before we dive into today's presentation, just a few brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on our new Zoom online meeting platform. If you encounter any difficulty with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, we would ask you to contact Zoom support, and you can reach them at 1-888-799-9666. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni Association website. And you can find those at bu.edu/alumni. We are very eager to answer any questions that you have today, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A box. You can find it by hovering over either the top or bottom of your screen and select Q&A.
And again, feel free to submit those questions throughout our presentation. We'll try to pause a couple points during our talk to see what questions have come in, but we're here to be helpful, and so please let us know any questions that come up as we go through. So with that, let's get started. Our goal today is to provide you with somewhat of a basic framework for how to build a network within the BU community, and specifically within the BU alumni community. And what Dan and I are going to be really focused on is sort of finding and then that initial outreach with our alumni in order to build a strong professional network. So the way that we're going to do this is by first covering a little bit of the why. Now, most of you know that having a strong network is a crucially important piece of advancing your career. But for those of you who maybe have been in a job for a long time and are recently thinking about making a big change or are returning to the workforce after a long break, there might be some things that you haven't thought of about as to why this is important. And so we will spend a little bit of time right at the beginning going over that. Secondly, we will be very specific with you about where you can find alumni to connect with, and we'll talk briefly just a little bit about specifically who they are and again, where you can find them to make these connections. The majority of our presentation is going to be around the how, specific strategies and tactics that you can use to make connections in order to advance your career. And then, of course, we'll save time for questions at the end. But as I said before, please feel free to submit them throughout the presentation. So, Dan, take it away.
Absolutely. So let's begin with looking at the why with one of the numbers that's often quoted, but no one is really sure where the data comes from. But we know that in general, about 70%, 70 to 80% of jobs that are available are not actually published. And you'll see this quote here from Matt Youngquist, president of Career Horizons. He was quoted on All Things Considered on NPR way back in 2011, but we think the sentiment remains true. So he talks about that number, that 70 to 80% of jobs aren't actually published, but most people, when they are thinking about their job search and executing that job search, they typically spend 70 to 80% of their time looking for jobs on the internet. So there's a mismatch there that Jeff and I believe we can start to close that gap if we really focus on networking and investing your time during your job search in broadening your network and then actually leveraging those connections to find some of those job opportunities that won't actually ever make it to a website. And secondly, we wanted to think a little bit strategically about the why in terms of what it means for your competitive edge. And we really believe that if you're able to establish a connection, that's your ticket to gaining that competitive edge. And so when we think about this, we want to talk about meaningful experiences, meaningful shared experiences, perhaps, that can open that door and establish the connection. And one of those experiences is your time at BU. So Jeff mentioned that there are over 300,000 living alumni around the globe. You have something in common with every one of those people in that you spend time at Boston University as a student, and now you share that identity as an alum. And that really can be a meaningful connection that can lead you to that competitive edge. You also might think about a person that you share in common. So if you find someone out there and you are on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is an especially helpful tool when trying to think about these mutual or shared connections. You can use the person that you share the connection with, that person in the middle, ask them to make an introduction for you, ask them to introduce you to the person that you're trying to connect with. Or you can reach out directly to the person that you like to network with and say, hey, I noticed that we both share Mary as a common connection. And then that can be a starting point for the conversation that moves forward and hopefully provides you that edge that we've been talking about.
A big piece of advice that Dan and I shared on this specific note is that when you're networking within the BU alumni community, it isn't even necessarily about who you can connect with directly, but it's also about who they know. And so as Dan said, please approach it that way, that while you might make a connection with somebody, they have a myriad of connections that might be helpful to you as well. So this is, the piece that I think for most folks is common knowledge about networking. The whole point of it is that it might open a door that otherwise might be closed to you. And I think a lot of us probably have stories we could share about somebody that we know, or even our own stories that having a connection on the inside of a company that you've applied for a job for can sometimes make all the difference in the world about whether or not your resume gets a second look. If somebody, thinks to bring you in for an interview, sometimes that personal reference, that just personal connection from the inside can open that closed door. Some of the things that you might not think about, though, that why networking is so important in today's competitive job market, I wanted to share with all of you. There was an article that came out just not too long ago in Fast Company, and you'll see, we should mention, we certainly are going to share this slide deck with all of you immediately after the presentation is over, and you'll find that everything that we're talking about, it has a link, so that within the document you can click right on that link and access it easily. And so this article that we're talking about, 3 surprising ways your network can help you job search, I think are some of the ways that people might not realize that building a network can be helpful. First and foremost, we're going to talk later today about talking about your work and about your successes and your impact. Many of you have heard of the 30-second elevator pitch, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But using your network and a BU network is a great opportunity to rehearse that. And sometimes that can be the barrier for people that they don't know how to talk about themselves. They don't know how to talk about the differences that they can make, the impact they can have on a company and organization without sounding like they're bragging or boasting about themselves. And so your network is a great way to rehearse doing that. Secondly, your network is a group of people that can often help you think about your career in a way that maybe you haven't. We all, I think, go through that experience where we're so bogged down in the daily details of our work and our lives that we might miss ways that we can expand our search for that new job. Maybe you're doing a certain thing in the one industry for a really long time. You might not even realize how those skills apply to other companies and other industries, and somebody in your network might be able to help you see that in a way that you can't. And then lastly, some people don't even think about this, but use your network to help you vet job offers. Hopefully all of you who are interested in finding a new job will have an offer at some point. Well, these people that maybe you network with along the way to actually getting that final offer, go back to those folks and have them review the terms of an offer that you've got. If you've got a connection inside a company that's made you an offer, they might be able to tell you whether or not the benefits package that you've been offered is standard or if it varies from place to place. So these are, again, a couple things that people might not think of to utilize their network for, and we wanted to make sure that we shared that with you. Again, I thought it was a great article, totally worth reading.
So we've, the list certainly does go on in terms of why networking is important. We could probably spend a whole hour just covering why networking is such a vitally important thing to do when you are looking for a new job or looking to take that next step. But Jeff and I also wanted to make sure we introduce you to some of the resources that you have available to you as an alum. And in thinking about the where and the who, Jeff and I certainly wanted to highlight the Career Advisory Network. This is in some ways the most powerful resource that we have to offer both current students and alumni. Right now we have nearly 8,000 advisors in our database, and basically what that means is that 8,000 alums have raised their hand to say, yes, I want to be a resource to students and alumni, and we also give those advisors the opportunity to tell the community how they can help. We do have advisors among that 8,000 community in all 50 states, including DC and Puerto Rico as well. We have over 1,000 international CAN advisors, and they cover over 100 different industries that are represented within the CAN. So no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, the Career Advisory Network is a really great place to start in terms of trying to break into the alumni network. That 326,000 number can be really daunting, but we think that this database gives you a shortcut. It's basically 8,000 people who have already raised their hand and indicated that they would like to help. Now, I talked a little bit about this, but some of the services that we allow our advisors to indicate that they can provide include one-time career conversations, long-term mentoring, resume review, informational and mock interviews, graduate school discussions, and job shadowing. And we think this really helps when students or alums are about to reach out to someone. Sometimes it can be a little bit scary, not knowing if you're asking too much of a person, but this way, the advisors who have customized their profile with these preferences, they are already telling you that, yes, I would be happy to look at your resume, I'd be happy to do an informational interview, whatever it may be. And also, if you're interested in searching the Career Advisory Network or becoming an advisor yourself, you can do that with the link in the upper right-hand corner. And again, if you can't see it right now, you'll be able to download these slides after the presentation. Some of the companies that are represented in the Career Advisory Network, again, this is just a very brief list, gives you a little bit of a preview into who we have and their backgrounds: IBM, PwC, Mass General, HubSpot, the list go on. And then some of the top industries in which our career advisors work include consulting, education, banking and finance, law, social work. But again, if you're not seeing something that aligns with your interests and your career right now, we still encourage you to go into the database and start searching and sorting that list of 8,000 advisors. We encourage you to start with a really broad search and then narrow it down parameter by parameter. And that'll give you the best chance of finding someone who shares something in common and who might be able to be a resource for you in the future. Secondly, we also wanted to introduce you to the Alumni App. Now, some of you may have attended our last webinar last month. That was a deep dive into the Alumni App. The webinar presenters actually navigated the app in real time to show you exactly how you can use this resource. So we have a link to that webinar in our library, but we wanted to give you at least a brief overview here and touch on a few of the highlights. So one of the first things that's really important about the Alumni App is that it allows you to really easily find alumni who are working in your area. Secondly, it'll automatically suggest professionals that you might want to be adding to your network from the alumni community. And it does that based on the information that you provide in terms of your industry, your current company, things of that nature. Thirdly, you can connect directly with Terriers anywhere in the world. So while the mapping feature will automatically show you the alumni who are in your immediate vicinity, you can certainly use this tool to find Terriers in other cities and other parts of the world. Maybe you're anticipating a move, or maybe you're anticipating you're not necessarily looking for someone to meet with in person, but just someone who's in your industry. You can certainly use it that way. And lastly, you can expand your LinkedIn network. Many of the profiles are directly linked to the LinkedIn network of that alum. So when you sign up and download the app, you'll actually see the LinkedIn icon next to any of the profiles that are automatically linked. So that way, in one quick tap, you're able to move from the Alumni app right to their LinkedIn profile. So you'll see the link to the webinar that I mentioned earlier over there on the left. But these slides are just going to give you a little bit of insight into what the app looks like after you log in. So here's the homepage. You'll see some of those key categories. When you tap Alumni Nearby, that's how you're going to see the geographic map. And each of the Terrier heads represents an alum in our database, and it's based on where they work. So it's pulling information based on their work address. So that's the Alumni Nearby. If you tap on any of the Terrier heads there, you'll actually be able to see the name and the industry of the individual, as well as their class year. We've blocked out some of the information for the purposes of this webinar, but when you log into the app, you will see first and last name, class year, and industry. If you tap,
and Dan, I just want to jump in on you real quick. This specific feature, I think, for anybody who's moving to a new city or has just moved to a new city after accepting a new job, this is an incredibly great way. Literally, you could sit in your desk, open up the map, and see BU alumni that work around you. So for those of you who are relocating, what a great tool.
Absolutely. If you tap on that Professionals to Know button, you'll get a list, a categorized list of all the professionals that the app thinks might be relevant to you. It's a pretty long list, so don't be afraid to use the directory feature where you can search and sort and narrow down that list further. Now, when you dive into the directory, what the app does is it gives you an opportunity to search based on a large number of different parameters, whether that be you know the name of the person and you're trying to find them that way, or you can just narrow down the alumni list based on their industry, either the information coming from LinkedIn or the information that we have on file in the alumni office. You can also filter based on the school, college, graduation year, and then, let's see. Jeff, would you be able to advance for me? Thanks. And you can keep going right on through. You'll see all the different fields on which you can search. And this is a really great way to start narrowing down the results. Again, 300,000 alumni is a little bit daunting, but by adding in these parameters one at a time, pretty soon you'll get a much more manageable list of folks that you might like to connect with. We also wanted to give you a chance to see what a profile looks like for an actual alum. So here we have Jenny Gruber, who is a member of the BU Alumni Council. She is a proud BU graduate from engineering. She currently works at NASA. So this gives you a sense of what you'll see once you find an alum that you'd like to learn more about within the Alumni app. You can see the connections that you share in common. You'll be able to see information about their work history. Again, any of the information that is being pulled in from LinkedIn will be noted. And sometimes you'll actually see alumni profiles where they have contradicting information. So one of the work fields says that they work at NASA, and another one says that they work somewhere else in the engineering field. What we often say is alums are much more likely to update their LinkedIn profile than they are to remember to send updated information to the Alumni Association. So especially when you're seeing options that are pulled straight from LinkedIn, that information is usually the most up to date. And as you get to the bottom of each alum's profile, what you'll see is an opportunity to contact that person. You'll see an email address and their business address. And if you tap on their email address, it'll automatically start an email right within the app. You can select which mailbox it comes from on your end. You can type the subject and body and send a note right directly to them through the app, which is a really great feature and allows you to network right as soon as you find the person within the app.
So that was a super quick overview of the Alumni app. Again, as Dan mentioned, we did a deep dive not too long ago, and so if you've got questions about the app, we'd encourage you to watch that in our library first. We've mentioned LinkedIn several times throughout this presentation already, and certainly I'm guessing that a lot of you figured that we'd be talking about it. One of my favorite things to do at BU alumni events where we're talking about careers and things like that is I love to ask our alumni, how many of you are on LinkedIn? And every single hand in the room will go up. And then I'll follow that up by saying, how many of you know what to do with it? And maybe, a third if we're lucky. LinkedIn is, I think, one of those things everybody believes we're supposed to be on it. Nobody really knows how to use it. There are two specific things that we want to tell you about today that I think make LinkedIn incredibly valuable as it relates specifically to building your network with BU and BU alumni. The first is our alumni group. We have nearly 40,000 alumni around the world who've joined the Boston University Alumni LinkedIn group for professional networking, sharing expertise, making connections in their region, all those kinds of things. Now you can see we've got a couple things highlighted here. Nearly 40,000 members. I anticipate will be over 40,000 after Alumni Weekend, actually. But a big piece of it is that we've got alumni who use this group to have conversations with each other about a wide variety of things. And one of my favorite things to see our alumni using the LinkedIn group is to make these kind of connections. We can show you a recent example from Manatsu. She recently relocated back to Tokyo and went to LinkedIn to let folks know that she was looking to make some connections. And nothing warms my heart more than to see all of the comments and supportive responses coming in from alumni in Tokyo, letting her know that they should connect. So that's a resource that's available to all of you today just by joining the group if you're not already a member. Most alumni have never heard of the Boston University Alumni Search Tool on LinkedIn. This is a LinkedIn tool that's available to all schools and colleges. But you can search through alumni who are on LinkedIn by a wide variety of parameters. And we'll show you a little bit about this. But this, to me, is the most powerful piece of LinkedIn that you can just browse through BU alumni to make connections with. In order to find this, you're going to want to go to any search page, any search tool on LinkedIn, as you can see indicated by the red arrow, and just type in Boston University. As you're typing that in, it will probably start to autofill. What you're looking to land on is the Boston University education page. It's kind of like a company page or a business page. It's a little bit different. Some people, I think they also at one point called them a school page. But just make sure that you find the education page and not the BU business page. That's going to show you this exact header. And you can see we've got circled there that blue box that says See Alumni. Just by clicking on that, you can search through Boston University alumni who have, rephrase that. You can search through people who are on LinkedIn who have Boston University listed in their educational history. And you can search through them by where they live, where they work, what they do. You can also see, this is pulling up 232,000, almost 233,000 alumni who have BU in their educational profile. Interestingly, for some reason, the BU Questrom School of Business, the Law School, and I believe the School of Medicine all have their own education pages. So alumni of those institutions are not counted in these numbers. Particularly for those of you who might be Questrom alumni looking to make some business connections, you might want to change the educational institution. That's a side note. But you'll notice here up on the upper right-hand side, you can change the years of BU alumni that you want to search through, what years they've attended the university. And as I mentioned, you can search by where they live, where they work, what they do. You'll see on the right-hand side, there's that little next button that also allows you to see Oh, sorry. So let's use this example. We've got a huge BU event coming up in Los Angeles in later in the month or early October. It's called BU Envisions, and it's really primarily because we have so many alumni out there who work in the entertainment industry. Let's say you were trying to make some connections with folks before that event. You could use this search tool to check out alumni who live in the greater Los Angeles area who work in entertainment. And so we've highlighted those fields, and I can see we've got 2,954 alumni who fit those categories. And then in that second column there, I can see here's all the companies that they work at. Wow, we've got 37 BU alumni who work at Netflix. If that's a company I'm interested in, those are 37 people who could potentially be my corporate champion on the inside rooting for me, and I might want to reach out and connect with some of those folks. You can also, again, search by further what they studied, what they're skilled at, and more importantly, how you might be connected to these folks on LinkedIn. As you know, on LinkedIn, you've got your primary connections, the people that you're connected to. All of those people, their connections are your secondary connections, and then the people that those folks are connected to are your third connections. So I can see, actually, this is, I believe, Dan's results. But, oh no, sorry, this is for anybody. No, this would be Dan's results. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see that Dan has 85 second-degree connections of people who live in Los Angeles and work in entertainment. Those are people that he's connected to's connections. So really valuable way to literally, once you highlight on something. So here we've highlighted all the alumni who say that they work at Netflix. You can browse through, see what their titles are, and then, of course, hit that blue connect in order to reach out to them. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that in a second. But one thing I want to say about these results, so you know, is that this lists companies from your entire educational history. So you can see, you know, Stephen, Shauna, Olivia, Mark, everybody on that top row, they all have a title currently at Netflix. But if you look down towards the bottom, you can see Blake, it says that she works at Facebook. Crystal, it doesn't mention any business at all. So Blake, as an example, she may have worked at Netflix previously, and now she works at Facebook. But even if she worked at Netflix previously and you're still interested in making connections there, chances are Blake probably still is connected to a bunch of people. So you might have to actually click on their individual profiles to see when or how they worked at any given organization. So those are the two big things that we wanted to talk about on LinkedIn. And again, this alumni search tool, to me, different from the Career Advisory Network. The Career Advisory Network, obviously, as Dan said, those are folks who've said, yes, please contact me. I want to be helpful. With LinkedIn, it's more of a cold call. These people didn't necessarily say, oh, I want to make myself available. But I think if you approach them the right way, and we'll talk about how to do that, and mentioning that shared common experience of having attended BU, possibly at the same time, that's the kind of thing that you can do to warm up a cold call. Another hugely important resource for building your BU alumni network will be attending BU alumni events. And we want to make sure that all of you know about our online events calendar by going to our website. And again, Dan's listed a link directly to the calendar in the upper right-hand corner of this slide, and you'll all get the deck later. We do nearly 1,000 alumni events around the globe every year. And so chances are you live near a city where we have a large concentration of BU alumni living. Some of you might live in regions that we don't get to, and that may be where these online resources become more valuable. But these events are going to be a great way to get out there and make some connections that you otherwise might not have access to. Or again, by attending these BU alumni events, you've got that shared experience that you can use to strike up a conversation with somebody. So going to our website, bu.edu/alumni/events, there's a landing page where right at the top you can see some of the upcoming events that are happening. And then on the right-hand side, by clicking View Calendar, you can drill down into seeing literally everything that's scheduled coming up. Importantly, too, the calendar allows you to filter by the type of event you might be looking for. So many of the events that we do during the calendar year are specifically designed for professional networking. Some of them are more social. Some of them are educational opportunities. As you can see, these real things coming up. Hopefully, you all know that this weekend coming up is Alumni Weekend. There are going to be many networking opportunities that Alumni Weekend. As part of Alumni Weekend, we've got this amazing lecture happening around approaches to the opioid crisis. That's more of a professional educational event, but certainly if you're working in that industry, healthcare, there's going to be other people there that you might have a chance to connect with. If you live in the Chicago area, we've got an event coming up called BU in the Loop. Specifically, networking in Chicago happens all the time. So this is a great way to meet some people in real life and make some connections. You never know where that might take you. So we've got a couple questions that have come in. Dan, if you think it's okay, I think we should pause here for a second and to look over them. So Jimena Roth has asked, can you update your profile directly in the app, or do you have to submit changes to the BU Alumni Association that then connects to the app? Dan, can you tackle that one for me?
Absolutely. So within the Alumni app, you'll see a button where you can update your information, and that will flow directly back to the Alumni Association, and we make those updates on the back end. So you can certainly take care of that. One thing to note, when you click on another alum's page, you'll actually see that same update information button, and that is if you want to make a recommendation. So if you're recommending that we update the profile for someone else, the Alumni Association would reach out to that person, and we would just need to hear from them directly in order to make any updates. And I scanned that second question as well. For folks who are trying to log into the Alumni app, and we're hearing that you're having trouble once you get to the login with the LinkedIn option. One thing to note is that the Alumni app is a resource that is, it's a closed community. So we need to verify that you are a BU alum, that we have a record of you as a BU alum before you gain access to the app. So if you are having technical difficulty, you can always reach out to the Alumni Help Desk. That's alumni@bu.edu. And you can reach out to them if you're having any technical glitches or having trouble getting approved to join the Alumni App community. They will certainly be able to help you troubleshoot there.
And some basic troubleshooting around the app, that integration with LinkedIn sometimes can get disconnected from LinkedIn because they've redone something. I always recommend, if you're having trouble, and Angela, I actually know you, you're a pretty tech savvy person, but obviously for those of you who may not be, restarting your mobile device, making sure that you've installed current mobile software, or even downloading an updated version of the app if you didn't just update it is sometimes an easy fix without having to get us involved. Another question came in. I had sort of blown through the alumni search tool on LinkedIn and mentioned that some of the other BU schools and colleges were not included in those results. So yes, the Questrom School of Business is not actually counted in those alumni numbers that we were talking about before. So you might have to search, in addition to Boston University, Questrom School of Business, School of Medicine, School of Law, in order to expand the results that you would get on that the alumni search tool that we talked about. Great. Well, those are all the questions we have right now. Again, we're gonna keep going forward, but as questions come up, please feel free to ask us. And if I see that a number of them have accumulated as we're going through our talk, we will we'll pause to answer those.
Great. So Jeff and I also wanted to talk about the how. And when we were brainstorming, the 4 basic tips that we started with actually go back to something that we crafted when we were working on the Career Advisory Network. We wanted to provide really boilerplate basic tips to keep in mind whenever you begin that networking journey. So the first tip we say is ask for advice and information. Don't ask for a job. I think there's an adage out there that if you want a job, ask for advice. And if you want advice, ask for a job. And we certainly believe that, especially when you are making a new connection, it can be really helpful to have the first ask be for an informational interview, just a chance to pick their brain, conversation, ask for advice, maybe information about a certain position that you saw listed at a company, but you're not asking that person for a job. Or if you've already applied, you're not asking to kind of bump your resume to the top of the pile. So when you're beginning those conversations early on, always ask for advice.
This is something I can't stress this point enough, and something that our alumni constantly are slamming our students and young alumni about, saying that the first thing that they said to them was, do you know about any jobs in your company? It's a little bit like dating, right? You got to get to know somebody before you get married. So I can't stress this enough. When you reach out to somebody, don't ask about the job. Make it about them first, and then get there later.
Absolutely. Our second tip follows along those lines. Be purposeful and also be professional. So what that means is the folks that you're reaching out to are likely very, very busy people, as we all are. So when we say be purposeful, get to the point. Make sure that the subject line is clear and the body is brief, so that the person who is receiving your message is able to understand who you are and what you need as quickly and efficiently as possible. And we always say be respectful. For the Career Advisory Network, many of our advisors have gone ahead and indicated what type of support they can provide. So make sure that the ask that you're making is aligned with those preferences that they've already identified. And make sure always maintaining personal and professional integrity in all your communications. As a BU alum, we know that all of you are certainly practicing that already, but we think it's important to at least run through as a reminder. Thirdly, we encourage folks to engage in responsible networking. And for us, that means not sending the same generic message to 80 different people on LinkedIn, just kind of hoping one person will get back to you. We encourage you to tailor and personalize each message to the individual that you're reaching out to. And then also along the lines of responsible networking, we like to recommend that if you're meeting someone for the first time and you're going to meet in person, pick a public place, a cafe maybe near where that person works. And once you get that first introduction out of the way, you should be in the clear. Fourth, we always like to remind people to show your appreciation and also use it as a chance to follow up. So after you've connected with someone, maybe you've done a brief informational interview with them, sat down for a cup of coffee, we encourage folks to always send them a note, whether that be by snail mail or email, a message on LinkedIn. Make sure that you are expressing your appreciation, and it's also a chance for your name to resurface in that person's life. So use it as a chance to follow up on the conversation that you started and continue the conversation down the line. So Jeff alluded to this earlier in our presentation, and when thinking about how we go about networking, a lot of people will talk about this idea of the elevator pitch. And this concept, I'm sure many of you are familiar, but it's basically the idea that if you were to step into an elevator with someone that you wanted to connect with, you wanted to make this connection, and you were going to ride that elevator for 10 floors with that person, what do you say in that amount of time to make sure that the person has all the information that they need and that the connection is actually solidified, and it's a connection that you can lean on down the line? In preparing this presentation, Jeff and I went back to another great webinar that we have in our archive. It's a webinar by the name of The Art of the Elevator Pitch, and it's a presentation by Desiree Young. And we wanted to at least do a brief highlight of the on-demand webinar library. You'll be able to find this webinar and so many others, 50, 60, 70 other webinar presentations. And we have a specific playlist if you're interested in networking and personal branding. So you can also find that from the Alumni Association website, certainly bu.edu/alumni/webinars. And when we went back to Desiree's example, her presentation on the art of the elevator pitch, we really found that it truly is an art form that she has boiled down to almost a science as well. So Desiree talks about the elevator pitch in 3 key categories: the target, the problem, and the impact. And I think the best way to illustrate this is with an example. So let's look at the elevator pitch of a financial planner. This is an example that Desiree gave. And the pitch goes like this: I help people with 6-figure incomes who are getting clobbered by taxes, staring at college and retirement, and wondering how in the world they're going to pay for it all. I show them how to send their kids to a private college for about the same cost as a public college, maintain their lifestyles at the same time, and fund their retirement. And you'll see within that text, we've denoted exactly where those 3 key bullet points are. The target is the people with the 6-figure incomes. That's the person that I, the financial planner, work with. The problem is that they're getting clobbered by taxes, staring at all these long-range expenses, and wondering how they're going to pay for it all. That's the problem that I, the financial planner, am ready to solve. And lastly, the impact. Illustrate your impact with a story, with an anecdote, something that will likely stick with the person. And Desiree does this in her example by illustrating that they can send their kids to a private college while maintaining their lifestyle and saving for retirement all at the same time. So it's quick, but it gets right to the point. And if you can, if this is a helpful model, this target, problem, impact, we would certainly encourage you to take some time to write out your own and think about when you have a really short window of time to make a connection with someone, what are the 3 key bullet points that you want them to walk away with? And we think Desiree's example, target, problem, and impact, is a really great way of thinking about it. We also wanted to provide just another perspective on the same idea of the elevator pitch with another 3 key points. Your elevator pitch is who you are and what you do. And again, it's brief, it's to the point. It's what you can offer, why you are qualified, why you are the right person. If the person that you're trying to network with might be able to help you find a job opportunity down the line, you want to make sure that they know right up front why you're qualified, what it is that you can offer them. And lastly, again, that show your impact. And it's not tell them about your impact, it's really to show them your impact. And one thing that Jeff added when we were talking about this is to remember that the elevator pitch, especially in a networking context, it should really be a conversation. It's not a presentation. It's not a startup venture going into an angel investor meeting, trying to encourage them to invest in their company. When it's networking, it's really more of a personal relationship. And so while we encourage you to be really familiar with your elevator pitch, don't feel like you have to go up to a person and say it as if you're a robot just blowing through these 3 main points. But we would encourage you to be so familiar with it that you're able to adapt it and be comfortable turning it into a conversation with a prospect down the line.
So, the elevator pitch, certainly a crucially important part of meeting people in person. As we talked about all these BU alumni events that we've got, a great opportunity to practice an elevator pitch. If you don't feel like you're somebody who's good at talking about who you are, what you do, you certainly don't want to feel like you're bragging about all the accomplishments you've had at work. The BU alumni environment can be a great place to practice that. And again, as Dan mentioned, we literally have done entire webinars just about the elevator pitch, and this was intended to be a really brief overview. So that's in-person networking. We also know that so much of networking is happening these days online, especially if you're trying to connect with people that you don't already know. These online written messages can be a crucially important piece of whether or not somebody wants to connect with you. Again, this could be its own webinar and has been. We want to call your attention to another webinar in our library that was offered by Moshe and Mugam, how to write a networking email that people will respond to. This webinar in our library has over 1,000 views. People have really found value in this. This is a great example that Mo used. I'm a 2005 BU grad who's been working in a PR agency for the last 6 years. right off the bat, establishing that you are connected with this person because you also went to BU, telling them a little bit of what you've done, why you are contacting that person. I'm considering moving to the client side, and I'd love to ask you about your experience. This person didn't ask for a job. They made it about the other person and said, you are somebody who I feel like I can learn from. Would you be willing to chat with me for 20 minutes so I can learn a little bit more and get your opinion on things? That's the strategy for piquing somebody's interest, is to make them feel and tell them how they can be helpful to you right up front. So there's no mystery to it. So that's a great example for email. But obviously, as we talked about, a lot of you are going to be connecting with folks on LinkedIn. I want to make sure that you all know when you click on that blue connect button that we all saw when you're about to connect with somebody, you have the option of customizing the introduction message to that person. You always must. It's not an option. You must customize that. I think all of us have gotten those generic LinkedIn connections from somebody that just says, I'd like to add you to my professional network. Well, why? Why would I want to connect with you? What's in it for me? Always customize that with a similar, very quick and to the point message. And in fact, on LinkedIn, you only have 300 characters to do that now. And so Dan has shared a great example here of reminding somebody that you met briefly at a BU event. I found it very interesting to connect with somebody else who was working in fundraising. We have that in common, hoping we connect here on LinkedIn and stay in touch. And again, making it about them is so important, and we can't stress that point enough. I know I keep saying it over and over and over again. Another example, we have a great alumnus named Joshua Waldman, who attended the Question School of Business. He literally wrote a book that you should all check out called Job Searching with Social Media for Dummies. He's also done a webinar for us in the past that's in our library, but I wanted to share a specific example that he found to be, or a model for how to do this. And then we'll share an example that I found particularly effective. Joshua's model is first, lead with something in common. And again, you all went to Boston University. You have that meaningful shared experience of maybe you studied on the Charles River campus, or maybe you were an online student, but BU is a bind that you have with other folks, whether you've met them or not before. As Dan has said previously, it's so important to get to it. Even though you want to do a warm introduction and share how you have something in common, you got to get to the point about what it is that you want and how this person can help you. You certainly want to talk a little bit about why it would make sense for you to connect with this person. If you can illustrate that you've had some experience, but that you feel like you could benefit from learning from them, that's always a great way to go about it. And again, be very, very specific about what you want. And so let's look at this example. He starts off by saying, oh, we're both connected to this person, asking how you know each other. An important note about making LinkedIn connections: if you see that somebody is a second degree connection from you, and you want to contact the person who could potentially introduce you to somebody that they know. Don't make the assumption that they actually know that person. A lot of people go through LinkedIn stages where they're connecting with people that they might not actually know if they're in the same industry or they work in similar companies, that kind of thing. So don't make that mistake of assuming that somebody actually knows somebody that they're connected to on LinkedIn. Saying that out loud seems a little bit silly, but it's certainly the truth. Another key point of this example, again, getting to the point really quickly, right after the second sentence or the first sentence, wanted to touch base with you because I saw an open position at Kendall Company, and I thought it would be a great fit for me. And in this scenario, Joshua used to work at Kendall Company. Third, why are you qualified? I'm now working on social media strategy for a digital marketing agency. Boom, you're qualified. It helps me understand why you're reaching out to me and how we might be able to talk about your experience. And then lastly, would you mind if I called you sometime this week to hear about your experience and perspective? So again, I know that we're going through this fairly quickly, but the points are all there. These sort of identify what you have in common, get to the point quickly, how that person can help you, make it about them. One other thing that I want to make sure that we talk about today, and we've got about 10 minutes remaining here. I think we can get through most of this and get to some of your questions, is if you're asking for somebody's help, make it easy for them. And there's a couple points about that that we want to be specific about. But let's say, for example, that you wanted to connect with me because there was somebody I could introduce you to, or because you were interested in a job at Boston University. And that's not necessarily an invitation to do that. But do your homework first and make it easy for the other person that you're asking for their help to help you. If you are applying for a specific job at a company that I work at, send me a link to that job so I know specifically which position it is. If you're asking questions of a person, don't ask them things that you might be able to find from a company website or by that person's LinkedIn profile to hear more about their role. Make sure that you've done your research first and then ask for help for things that maybe you couldn't find on your own. Another thing that you might think to do in asking somebody for their help is to make sure that they have at their fingertips all of the information about you that they might need. A lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to network with this person and I'm going to share my resume. I'm of the mind that I don't think the resume is the right document, and you might consider sharing something called a networking document instead of a resume. And by a networking document, to me, this really is your elevator pitch on paper, a really short summary or an overview of who you are and what you've done, but then more importantly, indicating your future direction. So if I were looking to make a change from education to media or communications, I might indicate why that transition makes sense for me, that I'm going to use the skills that I've applied here in a new way. It's very important, I think, identify for someone else that you're looking for their assistance, the kind of companies that you're looking to work at. So again, if I were transitioning to media communications, I might say the television stations in Boston, the radio stations in Boston, list specifically about the types of things that you're looking for. Be very, very specific about some accomplishments and impact that you're proud of, that you want to make sure that other people know about you. And this is where I think numbers are important. So for example, I might tell somebody that I'm looking to network with or I'm looking for their assistance that I oversaw a professional development webinar series that had 12,000 alumni sign up in over 59 countries around the world. Those kinds of figures, I think, really help establish that I've had some good experience that can be translated to other positions. And then lastly, a very, very short list of the companies, organizations that you've worked for, the educational experiences, but that's literally just bullets. Somebody just asked where they can see a good example of a networking doc. We made a choice to not share one for this webinar. I'd encourage you to just Google it. If you can't find resources on your own, certainly the Center for Career Development at Boston University is a resource you all have access to, and that's certainly something that they could help you with. Or just email Dan or I after the presentation is over here, and we can get you set up with some good examples. Hang on a second here. One last thing I wanted to share, and this is a real life example from my life. I have a best friend. His name is Seth. He worked at Google for a very long time, had some great experiences, and I made the decision to leave his job to get into politics, basically, and wanted to be more involved in establishing and continuing the democracy here in the United States. I happened to come across another BU alum I know who was doing some really interesting work in the space that Seth is interested in. So I told Seth, hey, I've got this connection. Somebody I know works at this great organization that you need to know about. I'm going to introduce you. And Seth did something that, to me, made it easy for me, but also really impressed me in that he shared with me, he typed up an introduction that I could use in connecting him to my friend Sarah. And so this is an example. I literally kept this in my email inbox and copied it and pasted it every time I wanted to connect Seth with somebody. But he wrote this up for me, and a couple points I wanted to highlight. He shared in the body of his introduction his LinkedIn URL, so that if people wanted to see more about his experience, it was right there. They could click on it right from my introduction before even getting back to me. This second highlight here that I very clearly state that the work that the two of them are doing aligns, and that's why I wanted to reach out and introduce the two of them. This whole sentence here is, again, Seth wrote this for me to say how we were connected, how we knew each other, and what he has been doing and what he's looking to do in the future. And then lastly, this was really interesting too, this last highlighted sentence. Seth typed up his introduction in a way that I could customize. And so he said, I know Seth is blank and have found him to be blank, and then gave me a bunch of things that I could choose from. So when we talk about making it easy for somebody, Seth made it really easy for me to introduce him to anybody that I wanted to, because I had this at the ready and could just copy it and paste it. So again, a great example that I wanted to share. And this, I just used this the other day. I connected with Seth with somebody else and dug this up and sent it off. It took me 2 seconds. He made it easier for me to help him build his network. Okay, we've got some questions that have come in, but Dan, are there points that we sort of forgot to make? We've got a couple minutes here to get to questions, but should we just dive into that?
I wanted to make one point, and this is something that we talked about before the webinar, and that is what happens when people don't respond. What does the etiquette look like? What do you do if you have, crafted a beautiful, perfect networking message and the person just isn't getting back to you? We certainly encourage you to follow up, maybe allow a full week to go by and send just a brief note following up. We've all lost things in our inbox. I'm certainly guilty of that. So we would certainly encourage you to send a follow-up message, but we would also encourage you, if the person isn't getting back to you after you followed up, you can really just move on, and you can continue to use all the tools that we've explored here today to find someone else who might be just as strong a potential connection, but who might have a little bit more availability to connect with you. And in terms of following up that initial message, you can also consider maybe sending them an article. If you're in the same industry, pass something along. Say, I thought you might be interested in this, and do it that way. It doesn't always have to be, hey, in regard to my last message, there are other ways that you can think about a more gentle second touch.
So getting to our questions, Danny had in the Q&A made a very generous offer to connect with everybody who was on the webinar today. Danny, that's a great point. Connecting with other folks who are also looking to build their network is a great way. And as we talked about, and as I responded to Danny, that's what the Boston University Alumni LinkedIn group is for. So I hope if you haven't, all of you, please go join that group. Again, just go to LinkedIn, search for Boston University Alumni, and you'll see the group pop up. Angela is wondering when the recording will be available. It's a manual process, Angela, and with Alumni Weekend coming up, we have some other tasks before us, but I would guess that we'll have this up maybe at the end of next week or the week after. Munia wrote in just to say thank you very much. You're welcome. Again, we know that we went pretty quickly through a lot of this and threw a lot of things at you. But it was just the goal of getting you started and make sure that you knew about some of the BU specific resources that were available to all of you. We're really glad that you were all here.
Absolutely. And I just want to say that our thanks also go out to all of you for participating today. And we specifically want to thank those of you who have donated to BU in the past. We have another really excellent webinar coming up later this month on September 27th. So that's just next week. And it's called Building Cultural Flexibility to Negotiate in a Globalized World. I'd encourage you to visit our website at bu.edu/alumni/events to sign up for that session and to see all of the events that are coming up, either online or in your region.
As always, if you or any BU alum you know would be interested in doing a professional development webinar for the BU community, we have a veteran of the alumni webinar series who attended with us today. Feel free to reach out to us at the Alumni Relations Office, or you can email me at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thanks everybody for being here. I hope you have a great day or a great evening wherever you might be. Take care.
Bye everyone.